Hey, everybody, real quick, if you need a recap of Stranger Things Season 4, either parts 1 or 2, I've got you covered. Just hit the tab in the upper right-hand corner. It'll take you right to it. Now, Season 5 starts out a few months after the end of Season 4, with Hawkins completely under military quarantine. The split that you saw in the Earth from the Upside Down to the real world, that's been covered up by the military with just sheets of steel. It's as if they kind of tried to weld the Earth back together and hope to God that no one noticed. Everybody noticed. Kids actually use it for sledding, even though it's like September. Because of the fact that everybody is now quarantined back in Hawkins, the Byers family has had to stay with Nancy and her family. It's a complete full house and a complete shit show. Now, unfortunately, Max is still in the hospital. She's in a coma, and Lucas visits her every day. All of the other kids, they're alive and well, and that includes 11, but she's in hiding because the military is desperate to find her. So she basically travels through tunnels underneath the ground, hoping to God not to be seen as she trains to take down Vecna. And she does this at a makeshift obstacle course that has been put together by Hopper. Every day she gets out in the field, she trains, and she tries to lower her time. And the reason why she's doing that is because Hopper told her if she can get her time under 12:30, she'll be allowed to accompany him when he travels to the Upside Down in search of Vecna. And that's the thing, they haven't found Vecna ever since the end of, everything that happened. But they don't go down looking for Vecna every night. They can't because of the military presence. I mean, the military literally has the house completely surrounded in quarantine on its own. So what they do is they do something called a crawl. They wait for the military to do a burn of their own, where the military will go inside the Upside Down. And then Hopper sneaks into one of the convoys and is able to get into the Upside Down. He then searches for Vecna, and once the military leaves, he hops back in the convoy, unnoticed, and he gets out. So far, though, after 30-something times of doing this, they haven't found Vecna. They haven't even come close. Now, while most of the kids are off to school every day, the older kids, they decide to spend most of their time at the local radio station, where Robin has taken the identity of Rockin' Robin, the DJ. And while it's a fun side gig, and Steve certainly likes helping her out with that, there's also an ulterior motive with this. She's able to pass messages to the group through the airwaves, secretively. It tips them off on when exactly they know when there will be a crawl or when there's just music ahead. But with the military presence, it has also affected the radio signal. Sometimes the military will just use up all the power or they'll mess with the frequency. And on one such day, as Robin is on the air, things go haywire. Steve immediately grabs the radio. He radios to his radio expert, Dustin, asking for help, but Dustin's a little short with him. He's got a lot of attitude. He essentially tells Steve, dude, figure it out for yourself. I mean, there's a manual. And then he heads into school. And everybody's kind of noticed that Dustin's attitude is stiff. He just doesn't seem like his normal self. But then again, none of the kids really do. I mean, after what they've gone through, their attitude at school has completely shifted. They're still made fun of by the jocks, but they're no longer intimidated by the jocks. And maybe Dustin is the embodiment of that, because when a bunch of jocks end up making fun of him for the Hellfire shirt, he pushes back, making fun of them right back. And it's a dumb move because they could easily kick his ass, but he doesn't care. He views sticking up for the Hellfire Club as sticking up for Eddie, his friend who died, whereas most of the town viewed Eddie as a Satanist worshiper. While Lucas and Mike are more than happy to stick up for their friend in these moments, they're also concerned with his attitude. They think that he's being stupid about all of this, drawing attention to himself, especially with the Hellfire stuff, but he doesn't see it like that, and it's kind of causing a little bit of a rift. As Mike, Dustin, and Lucas all head off to class back at the radio station, they're still trying to figure out how to get the signal back. At this point, Nancy and Jonathan have arrived. They start trying to help out. They find the manual, and what they're going to need to do is climb the radio tower. Jonathan volunteers, but so does Steve. There's a lot of toxic masculinity going on with Nancy being around. So when Steve goes to shut the power down, Jonathan takes his opportunity. But Steve isn't willing to allow him to have this win, so it starts a race between the two to the top, where eventually they kind of arrive at the same time. Nobody really wins. They turn the signal back on, great. But when they get back down, they also have a visitor. It's Murray. Murray's been bringing in groceries for, it seems like, everybody, including the military, but what he's been also doing is smuggling in goods for Hopper. I'm talking like large amounts of ammunition, grenades, the works. And he's also been able to figure out that there is going to be a crawl that night. The military is allotting a lot of resources that night to something, but they've been able to figure out that they're going inside, which means that Hopper will also be going inside. Now it's all on Robin to relay this message through music to the group, who all have their radios at the ready, waiting for some kind of signal. This includes Mike, Lucas, and Will, who are all eating lunch together, talking about how weird Dustin has been lately, talking about how Dustin wants to bring the Hellfire Club back when no one's really interested in doing that. And that's when Dustin arrives. They immediately have to pivot the conversation because they don't want him knowing how they really feel. But everybody then gets distracted once they hear Robin come back on the air. And they immediately start taking down notes when they get the signal that there is a crawl. When they take down the notes, they have the information about when the crawl will be, where it'll be, what time, all of that. Now that the message is out there, they all have to prepare. And they've been used to this. Again, they've done it 30-something times. Under the radio station, they literally have a secret layer where they set up for this such event. Everybody kind of gets in their places, with the kids going to the woods, the radio group being all the other kids who graduated. They're in the radio station. They all get together and discuss that night's plan, even though they've gone through it a bunch of times before. The key is going to be still being connected to Hopper in the Upside Down, because if they ever lose him, he's probably down there forever. And the way they do this is taking the radio van and essentially following his route. They search one area of Hawkins in the Upside Down at a time. They cross it off, and so far they've come up empty. But they also have to be very, very diligent on keeping the same speed and all of that as not to lose Hopper. That's the most important thing. And that's going to rely on Steve and Dustin. Even though they're kind of beefing at the moment because of Dustin's crappy attitude, they're still the ones in the van in the real world. Dustin's been able to set up a radio signal that is way too smart for me to understand, that is able to kind of track where Hopper is located, and they just can't get too far away from him. Now, even though it's been 30-something times and there hasn't been any sign of Vecna, and they've got guys like Steve who say, hey, maybe he has died and we just didn't find the body, there's still a lot of hope that this upcoming crawl will be the one where they do find him and they finally do defeat him and put all of this to bed. As Mike is kind of pumping up his group in the middle of the woods for that night's crawl, however, Will ends up having a little bit of a spell, which is something he hasn't had in a long time. He just feels like the sky is spinning all of a sudden. He has to catch his balance near a tree, and everybody notices it. And because it's Will, they're all pretty concerned for him. He kind of just brushes it off as it might be just nerves, and they get together and agree that later that night they're going to arrive at this exact time, and then they'll go through the crawl, as they've done many times before. Now, at this point, there is one kid that I have not talked about, and that is Mike's sister, Holly. After school, but before the crawl, Mike goes to the middle school to pick her up, but she doesn't come outside. And that's because when he goes inside, he finds that his mom is talking to the teacher. You see, Holly's had this imaginary friend that no one's really given a lot of credence to at all. But the imaginary friend is becoming more and more of an issue, let's say. So when Holly was out on the playground and playing on the merry-go-round, she was spinning around, and then she got the signal from this imaginary friend to come over, and they start having a conversation as all the kids are funneling back into the school. The teacher, wondering where Holly was, went to go check on her, and the teacher saw Holly having a conversation with nobody. So because of that concern, she called Mrs. Wheeler in, and they just had to talk about it. With Mrs. Wheeler talking to the teacher, Mike takes this opportunity to talk to his sister. His sister tells Mike that this guy, this imaginary friend, is called Mr. Whatsit. She assures Mike that Mr. Whatsit is only trying to help by protecting her because Mr. Whatsit told her there are monsters coming to Hawkins. And those monsters like to eat kids like her. Mike just thinks his sister is scared because everybody in Hawkins is scared, so he makes her feel better by pointing out that he gets scared and gives her tips on how he gets unscared of that moment. But nobody realizes that Mr. Whatsit is real and is going to become a very big problem for them. Now, the person putting his own life at risk here is Hopper, but it doesn't have to be like that. 11 has eclipsed the time that they agreed upon where she could also accompany him into the Upside Down, but Hopper doesn't accept it. He uses a bunch of excuses like, well, I didn't see you do it, even though Joyce definitely did. And what it really boils down to is Hopper is trying to protect 11. He doesn't want to put her at risk because he already lost one daughter. He doesn't want to lose another. So he tells her, look, if you want to search for Vecna, you're going to do it like you've done this entire time from the tub. But the tub hasn't worked. And because the tub hasn't worked, and it hasn't even come close to working, 11 is getting more and more frustrated, especially after she eclipsed the agreed upon time. And now she's realizing that he just never thought that she would actually make that time. But she did. Hopper, though, puts his foot down. You're not coming with tonight. Sorry, it ain't happening. 11, though, isn't the only one that thinks that she's ready. So does Joyce. When Joyce and Hopper have a private conversation, Joyce kind of pitches him on 11 being prepared, but Hopper shoots back, you have Will wrapped in bubble wrap. I don't really want your opinion on this matter. Joyce doesn't take offense to it. He just points out that he doesn't want to put Elle at risk with a recon mission because you just never know what could happen. He wants to keep her hidden underground, away from the military, but also away from Vecna. Now, while that was going on, Will and Lucas went to the hospital to check in on Max. Will at one point decided to go get a Coke and let Lucas be with Max alone, and when he was walking the hallways of the hospital, he oversaw Robin hooking up with one of the candy stripers. This is pretty shocking for him because you got to remember this is the 1980s and that thing isn't wildly accepted like it is now, or at least it's supposed to be. So he doesn't really know what to do and he runs away, but he was definitely seen by Robin, and Robin knows that she's going to have to bring it up with him later on. But it's not going to be that night because the main focus is the crawl. And when it comes time for them all to meet up at the radio station where they start this thing, there's one person missing and it's Dustin. Nobody knows where he is, and he's key to this whole thing. So everybody's pretty pissed off. They all figured that eventually he will show up, and one by one, everybody else shows up at the radio station. I'm talking 11, Hopper, the whole works. Before they kick off the crawl, Mike and 11 have a conversation about what happens after this all ends, what their future looks like. But then it's showtime. Everybody has to take their places. Again, though, there's one person missing, and it's Dustin, so they're going to have to figure out who's going to take his place in the van. Will agrees to go, but Joyce shoots that down immediately and suggests that Jonathan go instead. So you've got Steve driving, Jonathan handling the antenna on the van, Joyce, Robin, Nancy, and 11 at Central Control talking to everybody through the radios and making sure everybody's on the same page. Lucas and Mike from a watchtower watching all of the military action go down. They're going to be able to signal Hopper for when it's okay to go into the military convoy. And then Hopper just waiting for the signal. And when it goes down, it's business as usual. Hopper hops in the convoy after the burn. He is escorted into the Upside Down via the military. Of course, they don't know about any of this. In the real world, you've got Jonathan and Steve following along as best they can, making sure they don't lose the signal. But then things start to go haywire. The convoy in the Upside Down is attacked by a Demigorgon. Steve and Jonathan narrowly lose Hopper, but they don't, which is great. But one by one, the military guys, they start getting picked off. And you've got 11 on the outside. She's very concerned for Hopper. And then all of a sudden, Will starts having a vision. It's like he's taken over. But he's able to see what's going on through the Demigorgon's eyes. No one notices that Will is going through this fit until he quite literally collapses on the ground. And because of the surge in the power, all of the power ends up going out, with Hopper still stuck in the Upside Down trying to fend for his life at this point. And unfortunately, he's all alone because the power in the radio station just went out. He can't talk to anybody. However, most of the people in Central Control are just simply worried about Will, and he eventually does end up coming to again. He's clearly shaken up, and he looks at his mother and says, "I saw it. The Demogorgon is coming for them." And what he means by them is Nancy's family. This causes Nancy, Robin, and 11 to get in the car and race over to the Wheeler household immediately to check on the family. And over at the Wheeler household, you've just got Mrs. Wheeler, Mr. Wheeler, and Holly just at home chilling. That is until a Demigorgon falls out of the ceiling in Holly's basement. And that changes things. In episode 2, when Nancy and 11 get to the Wheeler household, it's a bloodbath. Mrs. Wheeler did all she could to protect Holly from the Demigorgon who came through the ceiling. Even Mr. Wheeler, who had been outside at that moment and then walked inside to a big surprise, also tried to fight it off. But Demigorgons are just too powerful. This particular Demigorgon left both Mr. and Mrs. Wheeler in a pool of their own blood, and it took Holly back to the Upside Down. So what Nancy and Eleven walked into was Nancy's parents on the floor in a bloody mess. Holly gone, having no idea where she was taken. But luckily for them, the portal to the Upside Down was still open. So Eleven took her shot. She walked right through it before it closed, and she searched for Holly. Meanwhile, you had Nancy, who called the ambulance to try to save her parents' life. When Lucas and Mike overheard this on the radio, they also headed straight to the hospital to see what was going on. Upon arrival, the Wheelers were rushed into emergency surgery, hopefully to save their lives, but it was 50-50. And because of what went down, Nancy beat herself up a lot. She just felt like she could have done more to protect her family. And Mike did his best to say, Nancy, you couldn't have done anything. Like, what were we supposed to do? But try telling Nancy that in the moment. She was hell-bent on taking the blame for all of this. Nancy started getting really dramatic, saying that Vecna isn't going to stop until everybody's drained of any happiness. And that's when Lucas piped up and said, no, something's not right with the situation. I mean, if Vecna really wanted to punish us, why didn't he do it himself? Why did he send a Demigorgon to grab your sister? And also, why did he leave your parents alive? Why didn't he just kill them? I mean, Vecna never leaves things unfinished. If Vecna wanted to punish you guys, he would have just slaughtered your entire family for you guys to find. I mean, look, I don't know what happened, but what I do know is this is pretty much exactly what happened to Will. And it's almost to the day of when it happened to Will. And I don't really believe in coincidences. But you know what? We got Will back, and we're going to get Holly back because Eleven's down there. And if anybody can get Holly back, it is Elle. Lucas then leaves both Nancy and Mike to just be alone, and he heads up to Max's room to hang out with her for a little bit. Meanwhile, back at the Wheeler household, not only have the police arrived, but the military arrived as well. The story that Nancy gave the police is that she arrived on her own. She never brought up Eleven. But for the military, who's been looking for Eleven, they don't buy it. And they decide to look at the security camera footage in a 2-block radius. And a little while later, Dr. K, the woman who appears to be in charge of all of this military operation, gets the photos back, and sure enough, there's Eleven in the front seat of the Wheeler car. She demands that they find Eleven, because to her, Eleven is the key to ending all of this. And right now, she's got men dying every day trying to contain whatever this is, and they can't find this girl. Of course, Eleven has made it to the Upside Down, where it doesn't take too long before she finds Hopper. Hopper, who is really surprised to see her. She quickly explains why she's there, the whole backstory with Holly, the Demigorgon. And then they luckily get a little bit of a tip on where the Demigorgon took Holly. Because Mrs. Wheeler fought so valiantly, smashing a wine bottle and trying to stab the Demigorgon, that the Demigorgon is leaking. It's leaving a blood trail that's easy enough for Eleven to follow. All of this is a lot for Hopper to take in. He's also really pissed off that Eleven has made it to the Upside Down because it's against everything he ordered, but Eleven doesn't care. As they continue to follow the blood trail and Hopper continues to harp on the fact that Eleven disobeyed his orders and she's being hard-headed, it finally comes to a head when Eleven notices that Hopper is labored. And that's because he took some damage in that fight with the Demigorgon before. When Eleven sees this, she starts trying to patch Hopper up a little bit, make him feel better. And the two have a little bit of a heart-to-heart where Hopper talks about losing his daughter. How hard that was. How he fought in the war, but watching his daughter fight for her life was something he had never seen before. And she was the bravest person that he had ever seen. While it's pretty clear that Hopper is just simply worried about Eleven and putting her in danger, there's no point of really arguing the fact because they're together at this point in the Upside Down, searching for Holly. And then all of a sudden, they hear something. They think it's a Demigorgon, so Hopper decides to load up his weapon. But when they get closer, it's not a Demigorgon at all. They find little Holly's shoe, so they know that they're headed in the right direction, but they can't really go any further because what they're looking at is a full-on wall. I mean, think Game of Thrones ice wall, but this is like Stranger Things Demigorgon wall. It's weird looking, and they don't know how to get through it. Now, back at the surface, you've got Joyce trying to get the generator back up and communications back up so that they can locate Hopper, because the van has died out and thus lost Hopper. For Steve and Jonathan, they have to get a jump. And as they're waiting for the jump that can restart the van, they start getting into it. Jonathan having enough of this toxic masculinity bullshit that he's been dealing with since he came back from California with Steve, thinking that Steve is trying to weasel his way back into Nancy. And Steve shooting back, dude, we're friends. That's it. And you've been super paranoid since you come back from California. I mean, maybe just focus on making her happy, because it's pretty clear right now both of you guys are miserable in this relationship. But their petty argument takes a back seat when up walks Dustin, battered and bloody. Now, he gets in the van, and the story he tells them is that he just fell off his bike and he flaked. And Steve doesn't buy that. He knows that Dustin was pretty clearly jumped, and he has a pretty good idea of who he did it. And that's exactly what happened. Dustin went to Eddie's gravesite, and those jocks ended up jumping him because Dustin scared one of them by putting a snake in the guy's locker. So they beat the crap out of him. It caused Dustin to miss the meeting, and Steve just starts going in on him. I mean, for the fact that he's been a dick, for the fact that he clearly is lying about what actually happened to him, and the fact that if he had been there and not gotten his ass beat, they'd have at least a better chance of still being connected to Hopper instead of just driving around this one particular zone, hoping that they get lucky. And as they're continuing to argue about this, Jonathan is in the back just trying to get a signal, so he's getting more and more upset. It's a very tense car ride for everybody involved. Back at the radio station, though, Joyce is having issues because, she's a mom that doesn't really understand technology. Robin's trying to do her best, but Robin's also concerned with what happened with Will. She asks her, hey, when Will has these visions, has this ever happened before where, like, everything short circuits? And Joyce says, no, not really, but do me a favor and go fix it. Because what Joyce really wants to do is talk to her son, one-on-one. She asks Will what happened, and Will says he was looking at everything through the eyes of the Demigorgon. He was seeing what it was seeing. He was thinking what it was thinking. But he has no idea why it went after the Wheelers or why it took Holly. Joyce mentions how this doesn't make any sense. They severed the connection, but Will tells her, I don't know if the connection was ever truly severed. Ever since he took me, I was permanently changed. These feelings of connection, they come and go, but that summer when the gate opened, I felt it again. It went away when I was in California, but the day after I came back, I felt it again. And it's worth mentioning that every single time Will feels it, he starts feeling it on the back of his neck. Will then tells his mother he's closer than ever before. That's when they're both interrupted by Robin, who is listening to the conversation and says, well, maybe you're like a radio receiver, Like how when you're closer to the signal, it's loud and clear, but then when you get far away, there's static. And to Will, that actually makes perfect sense. He gets excited about this and says, yeah, you know what, that's probably how we're going to find Holly, is me, using me to find her, like a radio signal. He then tells both of them that earlier in the woods he had a vision, and he didn't understand it at the time, but maybe he was seeing it through the Demigorgon's eyes too. If he goes back to that site, maybe he can connect to the hive and go back to that signal and find out where she is. But Joyce doesn't want him doing that. Again, helicopter mom, she wants to wrap him in bubble wrap. What she's really concerned about is the fact that if he does this, Vecna can once again take control of Will. But to Will, this is their best idea, and if they don't do something, Holly's going to die. Joyce, though, is adamant that they're not going to do that. They're going to stick with the plan, getting the radio station back up, communicating with everybody, finding out where Hopper is. That's what the plan was initially. That's what the plan's going to be now. They're going to get everybody back, but they're not going to risk another life doing so. However, again, you've got a helicopter mom, and then you've got the best chance they have. So Robin takes it upon herself later that night to kind of pull one over on Joyce. She sees a red light that's always on one of the control panels and says, oh my God, the flux capacitor is acting up. It's a two-man job. I'm going to go fix it right now, but I'm going to take Will with me. And then she pulls Will aside and says, look, obviously the flux capacitor thing was BS, but your idea is the best idea we've had, so we're going to sneak out and we're going to, see if it works. And that's what they do. So they head out to go, quote, work on the flux capacitor. Later in the night, Joyce does end up radioing Jonathan, Steve, and at this point, Dustin, and says, hey, is the flux capacitor messing with your signal too? And they're all pretty confused about that, having no idea what's going on. But what's going on is that Robin and Will have arrived in the woods, and they're heading to the exact location where Will had his spell earlier. As they're walking, Robin addresses the elephant in the room of what Will may or may not have overseen the previous day in the hospital. Robin about to hook up with a candy striper, but Will assures her that it's no big deal. He didn't see anything. I mean, after all, we're in season 5, and it definitely seems like Will is an ally, if you know what I mean. However, when they get close to the location that Will had his vision, there's a spiral made of rocks on the ground. And that's when Will remembers the vision of him spinning around, but there was also laughter, which means that maybe if they get closer to the school, the signal will get stronger. So they head there. They arrive there a little while later, and Will is like, yeah, I think this matches. I mean, I must have been seeing things through Holly at this point because I was on this merry-go-round in the sky and I was spinning around. Robin's a little confused because at this point they had thought that Will was seeing things through the Demogorgon, and he says, no, I did too, but think about it. Vecna controls the hive mind, which means he's a part of it too. So when he searches for his victims, he sees what they see. So what if I was seeing everything through the eyes of Vecna's next victim, which would mean that I was Vecna? And as he's having this realization, there's a realization that's happening in the hospital with Mike. He's starting to realize that that imaginary friend that Holly had might not have been imaginary. Because after what Holly told him about how Mr. Whatsit told her that there were monsters in Hawkins, they were coming after kids, and then she herself was taken, he's starting to believe what Lucas believes. There are no coincidences. I mean, the theory clearly has holes, but they need more information. And to get that information, they need to go to the one person that is currently available that would know anything about Mr. Whatsit, and that's Mrs. Wheeler. Getting to Mrs. Wheeler, though, is going to be an issue. She's basically under lock and key by the hospital. She's not being allowed visitors at all. So it's going to cause both Mike and Nancy to fake candy striper patient to sneak into a room, but they're able to do so. And Mrs. Wheeler is really banged up. I mean, she's on the mend. She can't talk. She could have to write down her answers. But they start questioning her on anything she knows about Mr. Whatsit. What he looks like, which is a hat, a vest, a pocket watch. And then they ask her, did Holly ever say what his name was? And she nods and writes down the name Henry. Because what happened to Holly, at least in her mind, was she was taken by Henry, a.k.a. Vecna. Although everything was great. The sky was blue and sunny, and all Holly cared about was that her friends and family would be protected. And Henry told her, I'm absolutely going to protect your friends and family. Don't worry. You're going to be safe here. As he lured her into the house. In episode 3, in Holly's new reality with Henry, the house, like great weather, it just looks very scenic. The two start talking. He's promising a lot and all of it good, but he does say, I'm going to save more of your friends. And the next friend that he is going to save is this kid named Derek. Now, Holly doesn't like Derek because Derek, to be quite honest, is a dick. He's that bully that just goes around and terrorizes other kids, and she doesn't want to hang out with Derek in the house. But as Henry puts it, do you want the monsters to get Derek? And Holly says, no, I don't. Okay, save him. In order to save him, though, he's going to have to leave, which is going to leave Holly in the house by herself. But he says, hey, anything in the house, it's mine, it's also yours. And there's a lot of stuff that she is going to want in that house. It's like a dream scenario for her. To the point where when she opens up the mailbox, it's things that she wants for Christmas. So it's basically everything that would keep a child entertained in one place. But he does leave a warning. You can have anything in the house. You can't go in the woods. Promise me that. Do not go in the woods. And Holly's like, yeah, no problem. All right, just get out of here so I can play. And she starts dressing up. She starts enjoying herself. She sees a picture of a kid dressed as a Boy Scout. So she gets curious. She goes over to the Boy Scout stuff. She puts on the bandana, but then she overhears a knock at the door, and she gets a little scared. She initially thinks it's Henry, but Henry's not coming in, so she decides to go open it up. But at this point, whoever was there has left, and there's a letter in the mailbox. When she opens it up, though, it says, "Hey, Holly, I need your help. Come to the X," and there's a compass. But the X is on the outskirts of the woods. I mean, you have to go through the woods to get to the X, and Holly starts questioning all of this. I mean, Henry told me not to go in the woods, but here he is telling me to go to the woods, meet him at the X, and she doesn't quite know what to do. But she remembers what Mike said about being brave, and she decides, you know what? If this is what Henry wants, maybe he changed his mind. I'm going to do this. I'm going to go through the woods. X marks the spot. She grabs a fireplace poker as a source of protection. She puts on a little bit of a cape, and she heads through the woods. And then she reaches it. It's literally just a wall. She can't go any further. She starts calling for Henry, but Henry's not coming out. And then she sees something in the crack of the wall, and she gets freaked out. She starts running away, hiding, terrified, because who's ever after her is not Henry. But then she trips. She starts hiding. She's scared. And then she sees who was chasing after her. To her surprise, it's Max. So that's what's going on in Holly's universe. But in the Upside Down, both Hopper and 11 start trying to make some headway to get through this wall of whatever it is. But it's not budging. I mean, 11's trying to use her powers. Hopper is stabbing the thing. But they're making zero headway, and it's taking a toll on 11. Now, 11's convinced that if she just eats some more and quote-unquote refuel, she'll be fine. But Hopper's like, no. I mean, you had a full tank, and you're not making a dent in this thing. But as they start to game plan, they hear something coming from the distance towards them. And it's not a Demogorgon. It's clearly the military. Hopper says, yo, we got to get out of here. But 11 is frozen stiff because the military has something that is keeping her standing still, unable to move. It's like a sonar or a radio wave or something. But whatever it is, it's immobilizing 11. And it forces Hopper to drag her to safety, hiding from all the military members. The military have shown up because they figured out that 11 is in the Upside Down, so they're just doing random sweeps trying to find her. But when they get to the wall, there's no sign of 11, so they think, okay, she's not here, we can move on. But then they see Hopper's knife. That alerts them to the fact that somebody is close by, somebody who's not military, somebody who's not supposed to be there. When the lieutenant that's in charge sees this, he tells the guy with the radio wave that's immobilizing 11 to do a sweep of the area. And when it targets 11, she starts screaming because she's in deep, deep pain. This, of course, tips off all the military guys that whoever is out there is in the area, and they start opening fire, which causes Hopper to jump on 11 to protect her from the bullets. He, however, immediately starts firing back, aiming right at the radio dish that is causing this frequency that's immobilizing his daughter, and throwing some grenades for good measure. Once the radio frequency is destroyed, 11 is fine. She's able to assist Hopper, and she's even able to help him get a hostage. It's that lieutenant that's in charge. As they start trying to game plan for what they're going to do next, as the military does flybys with helicopters, they decide we're just going to interrogate this lieutenant. It's really all 11's idea because Hopper thinks that he doesn't know anything about what the wall is, but 11's convinced, no, let's actually ask him. Hopper was against interrogating this guy because he just didn't think it would work. He held up 2 weeks against the Russians, and he figures he might be able to get some convoy information out of this guy, but real information about what's the wall or how to destroy it, he's not going to get that information out of him, not in the time frame that they have. But 11 points out, with my help, you will. So the two go to work. Hopper questioning this guy while 11 invades his mind. And it does work. I mean, she starts seeing everything that he's seen in the past. Initially, he pushes back, acting dumb, but Hopper knows that this guy knows exactly who Dr. K is because the person who's in charge of this lieutenant is a guy named General Sullivan, and he knows Sullivan takes orders from K. And as 11 continues to invade this guy's mind, there's one door that she needs to find out exactly what's behind. She can tell that it's something big, but the guy is swearing he has no idea what it is, and he's begging for her to get out of his head. It gets to the point where 11, who is firmly implanted in his head at this point, uses her powers to bust open the door, but then it just goes blank. The lieutenant keels over. Hopper runs to where 11 is doing her experimentation, and he asks, hey, is everything okay? and 11 is freaked out. She tells Hopper that whatever's on the other side of that door is the kryptonite that the military was using to keep her still. But this time, though, it was way louder than before, and she's convinced that it's somebody that the doctor is keeping there, and there's only one person that fits that description. 11 is convinced that Dr. K has Vecna. But then finally, in the real world, everybody reconvenes at the radio station. For Mike, Lucas, and Will, they're really surprised at the state of Dustin, but he lies and says, "Oh yeah, I fell head first off my bike." They buy it. But once everybody actually gets into the radio station, they all start telling each other what they know. Nancy and Mike reveal that they know Vecna came to Holly through Henry. And then Will tells them that he's able to confirm the next target is, in fact, Derek. He was able to tap into the hive and figure it out. He explains to everybody how he was able to do this, but now they need a plan on how to protect Derek. And it's a pretty dicey one because it involves kidnapping Derek and making sure that he doesn't know where he is. To the sane people, and this is going to surprise you, Steve, that plan sounds terrible. I mean, kidnapping, getting arrested for it. But even Joyce is on board with this, saying, well, we're kidnapping to protect a kid. Although Dustin points out, yeah, but this doesn't actually help. I mean, it buys us some time and it protects Derek, but it gets us no closer to Holly. But that's when Mike adds on to the plan. So the plan they're going to go with is knocking Derek's family out cold, so they have no idea what's going on. They drag them out to a barn to safety, so the Demogorgon can't find them. From there, they're going to lure the Demogorgon into the house under the false pretense that Derek is there, and they are going to shoot him with a tracking device, and then injure him so badly he returns to the upside down, and then from there, they can track the Demogorgon, hopefully back to his lair, where they're able to find Holly. There's just one problem, and that is getting into Derek's house, although they do have an in, and that's through Erica. Mike and Lucas head over to the middle school where Erica, who at this point looks like she's 27 years old, is going through her favorite subject, science. She's the only one in the class that knows anything about wormholes, but then again, she's going for her master's degree, so that's not a surprise. They pull Erica out of class, and they explain to her that they need Erica to have a sleepover with Derek's sister, which makes sense because Erica is best friends with Derek's sister, but it turns out those two are beefing at the moment. Although when they really get down to brass tacks and they explain that they need Erica to do this to save Holly, she agrees to say those words that nobody wants to say, "I'm sorry," apologizing, going in, and essentially poisoning the entire family with a pie full of enough drugs that can knock an elephant out. While they were doing that, Will and Robin had headed to the hospital to steal those drugs. Did get a little awkward for Robin because she ran into the candy striper that she's trying to date, knowing full well she's going to have to blow off their plans that night, so she wanted to avoid her, which, by the way, she's able to do. Will, who is clearly trying to get a better understanding of his sexuality, starts asking Robin how exactly she knew that the candy striper was interested. And then they finally do find the treasure trove of drugs that will allow them to knock out this family that night. The plan is coming together. The last bit of the plan, though, is getting the weapons that they're going to need to attack the Demogorgon, which involves Murray. They radioed Murray that morning, a wish list, and he got most of it, but he didn't get all of it, which Dustin takes full exception with. And Murray tells him, "Bud, you gave me this list this morning, so how about a thank you?" And even Dustin, with his crappy attitude, has to save face and say, "Yeah, no, you're right, thanks." He then, however, turns his crappy attention towards Steve again. They haven't made up since their little tiff the night before. Steve is in the process of trying to get the van prepared for that night when Dustin, who once again had a horrible attitude, decided, "Oh no, I have a better idea." And he started cutting into Steve's car, putting the antenna on Steve's vehicle because they're going to use Steve's that night, which Steve is completely against, mind you. But it's too late. Dustin already cut the damn thing. While they were doing that, Nancy was preparing the tracking chip, which she's planning on putting in a shotgun shell, shooting it into the Demogorgon. When Murray saw that, he started laughing, thinking, there's no way that the tracking chip actually will survive, but Nancy says, okay, well, let's test it out. So her, Murray, and Jonathan head out to a field where they're going to test it out. Murray starts giving Jonathan crap because it's taking Jonathan forever to take their relationship to the next level, kind of putting a lot of peer pressure on him, unaware that he actually bought a ring. Although it's the 1980s, hell, it might be a promise ring. We don't know. But then it comes time to actually test this theory out, and it works. Yeah, the shotgun shell does not destroy the tracking chip, so now it's just a matter of setting everything up. That night, Erica heads over to the house. She apologizes to Derek's sister. She's allowed inside. She starts feeding everybody the pie. There's only one issue. There's one person that won't take the pie, and it is Derek's sister. So when one by one family members start dropping, Erica injects Derek's sister with a syringe, knocking everybody out, and the plan is then put in motion. Everybody starts reworking the house, booby-trapping it up so that when the Demogorgon does arrive, they're fully prepared. And once this place is a death trap, then they just have to wait. Steve and Dustin on the outside in the car, waiting for the Demogorgon, giving signals to those on the inside about the updates, and when the thing finally does arrive, boy, are they prepared. They end up completely fooling the Demogorgon. I mean, the plan works great. Lucas is able to draw it out. Mike is able to hit it into a hidden hole in the floor down in the basement where it lands in a bunch of barbed wire. Nancy then shoots it with the tracking chip. Jonathan lights it on fire, and at this point, the thing wants out, so it jumps back into the upside down. Now, they just have to track it. Jonathan and Nancy jump in the car and start tracking it with Steve and Dustin. They start following it, but then all of a sudden, it turns the opposite direction. All the while, they're giving updates to those in the barn that are keeping tabs on the family, those people being Robin, Will, Erica, and Joyce. And as they're trying to figure out why exactly the Demogorgon did a 180, Will figures it out. He tells everybody, we're southeast. That's why the Demogorgon turned around. Vecna has seen us. He knows where we are. In episode 4, because Will knows that the Demogorgon is coming for them, he tries to get everybody out of the barn ASAP. There's just one little problem, though. Derek woke up. He wasn't supposed to, but he's scared. He thinks he was kidnapped. And they try to explain to him that there are monsters coming. And to their surprise, he knows all about the monsters because he's very familiar with Mr. Whatsit. Just like with Holly, Mr. Whatsit visited Derek as well. But Derek certainly doesn't believe these people. I mean, they just kidnapped him. So as he's hiding and they're trying to convince him, Derek, you're literally signing your death certificate. We got to get out of here. The Demogorgon shows up. When it does, though, Will is able to go into the Demogorgon's body. It's like he talked about before. He's able to see exactly what the Demogorgon is seeing. It's like he's connected to it. So he can see his mother standing in front of this Demogorgon with an axe trying to shield it from going after any of the kids. And the Demogorgon starts backing up because Joyce is very formidable with that axe. And the Demogorgon backs up so much that it ends up getting run over by Steve, Dustin, Nancy, and Jonathan, who had just shown backup. It injures the Demogorgon so much, the Demogorgon goes back into the upside down, but it also leaves the portal open. And Steve decides, you know what? I bet you I can drive through that thing and follow it that way. So against the better judgment of Dustin and Jonathan, he decides to go for it, driving his car as fast as possible and seeing if he can drive through that portal to the upside down, and sure enough, he can. Because of what they just went through, though, everybody is a little on edge. Everybody's arguing in the car. They can't really see very well, and then they crash the vehicle into a wall. It's actually the same wall that Hopper and 11 came across, the one that they couldn't get through. Although, since they're currently in the upside down, they should be able to get a hold of Hopper via the radio, and Dustin ends up radioing to him, and sure enough, Hopper answers. At that point, Hopper and 11 had made their way to the outskirts of the military base in the upside down. They just were trying to figure out a way to get inside. 11 wanting to jump using the lightning from the upside down as coverage, and Hopper being a little suspicious about that. But they table the conversation when they hear Dustin on the radio, and he explains, yeah, we hit a wall. We're over near the cemetery. And Hopper tells him, yeah, actually, we hit the same wall, but we're like 2 miles in a different direction. Nancy realizes that Hopper and 11 are on the opposite side of town. And that's when Hopper says, yeah, we don't know what that wall is, but we think that Holly's behind it. We're working on a solution right now to it, and Nancy gets really upset and says, no, what kind of solution? But Hopper overhears helicopters and tells them we really should stop talking on the radio, and he shuts it off, so Nancy gets no solution whatsoever. A very frustrated Nancy and her group are sitting around the cemetery deciding what to do, and that's when Dustin realizes that via geometry, he's been able to figure out that that wall is a circle. circling all of Hawkins in the Upside Down. But not just that, at the center of that circle is the lab where all of this started. I mean, what are the coincidences of that? So maybe if they head to the lab, they'll be able to end this thing, you would think. So they're planning on heading to the lab, whereas you've got Hopper and 11 trying to figure out a way in, and Hopper finally gives in. He's going to allow 11 to go this on her own and try to use her skills that he's been training her for. And she's able to. She jumps over the fence, she even kills a guy, and she lets Hopper through the front door. Now it's just a matter of finding that door. And at first, they go to a scientist who claims that he knows nothing about the door. He doesn't know how to open it. He can't access it. And that's fine. Hopper just knocks him out, and he figures that 11 will use her powers to access the door. But as she's doing it, all of a sudden, alarms start going off. And those sonic frequencies that throw her off, her quote-unquote kryptonite, well, that's what's being played. And it's crushing her. I mean, she's completely debilitated. Hopper ends up dragging her into a separate room just to keep her safe, he hopes, while the sound continues to go, and that's when Dr. K and other military members come in. Now, Hopper tries his best to fight them off, and he is very successful with this, but he also gets wrapped up by an arm from one of the monsters from the Upside Down, so he can't move. And as for 11, she was found by Dr. K. Dr. K starts telling 11 who she is, how long she's been searching her, but 11, through pain, mind you, says, I know who you are, I know who you've taken, and I know that you and your men are going to die. With 11, however, pretty much immobilized, Dr. K goes to check on our other men, and that's when she finds all of them dead, but Hopper is clearly tied up by this monster, so she starts interrogating him. Hopper, though, isn't giving her any information whatsoever. And that's when 11 crawls out from the room that she was hiding in and tries to help out Hopper, but she's too weak at this point. Dr. K starts kind of mocking Jane and pointing out that she knows Jane isn't strong enough to actually do anything, but what she wasn't banking on is Hopper being able to free himself, which he is able to do. And he starts taking it to Dr. K. He has her dead to rights, and she looks at him and says, it's too late. The cavalry is on its way. But he knocks her out anyway. He, though, realizes that Jane is in a tough predicament. He's got to get her out of there. So he gives her direct orders to go and find Dustin and his group. But she doesn't want to leave Hopper alone to deal with Vecna, though Hopper had a little bit of a backup plan. 11 notices that he is strapped up with dynamite, and he assures her, look, this is just a failsafe. If I'm going down, he's going down with me. But she's scared for him, and he's going to do it anyway. The last thing he says to her is, I just want to let you know how proud I am of you, and then he leaves. He locks the door. She tries to go after him, but once again, she's in a really weak state, and she can't. Finally, though, after a little bit, that sonic frequency stops. It seems like it just crapped out. And that's when the door opens up, and it's Hopper. He's back. He was able to shut it off. But not only was he able to shut it off, he was also able to open that door. The door where Dr. K was clearly hiding something. They thought it was Vecna. It's not. It's number 8. 11's quote-unquote sister. Now, maybe 8 knows where they can find Holly, who has been able to find Max. She vaguely recognizes Max, and it takes a little bit, but Max admits that she's the one who wrote that letter, not Henry, and Henry is bad. Again, it takes a little bit to convince Holly of this, but Max is able to, and she starts telling Holly all about where she is and how long she's been there. Max tells Holly that they are in Henry's memories. She was put there when she went into the coma, and she's been trying to find her way out this entire time. For her, it started from a memory in the 1950s, and then it just kept going. And at one point, she thought that she had found a way out. She heard Kate Bush. The portal had opened up. She was witnessing herself in the coma in the hospital with Lucas, and she thought, finally, I can get out of here, but she couldn't. Because once the tape stopped, the portal immediately shut down, and she was stuck there. But not only that, Henry had noticed, and he was pissed. He chased her around and chased her all the way to that wall, and she tells Holly, there's something about this wall that he doesn't like because he wouldn't follow me in. But when I looked at his face, he was clearly scared. But Max has been there ever since, trying to find a way out, and now she feels like Holly could help with that. Max tells her that she has a plan, and they're not going to have a lot of time to do it, but Henry's going to return to the house soon, and Holly needs to be there. And not only does Holly need to be there, but Henry has to have no clue that she ever left. Now, Holly's terrified, and Max realizes this but says this is the only way, so you have to do it. Now, back in the real world, though, they have another issue. Kids are being taken. Not by monsters this time, not by Henry, but by the military. Because Dr. K realized that 11 was associated with the missing kids. She didn't realize anything had to do with Henry. She really thought that this was just 11 kidnapping children, so she figured she would use the kids as bait. She rounded up all the kids and took them to the military quarantine zone that is strictly non-access, hoping to God that would lure 11 out and then they would finally be able to find her. But this is causing a problem for Will and his group because they need to save these kids. And Will, when he tapped in the Demigorgon, got a vision of everything. He draws this symbol on the barn wall, and he says, I don't know what it is, but I can feel it's important to him. And then he's able to realize that, for whatever reason, Vecna is going after 12 kids. Obviously, one of them was Holly, the other was Derek, so they need to find the others. But that's going to be really difficult under military police. Now, they do have some good news. There's a tunnel that goes directly under the barracks of where they're keeping the kids. But getting to the kids is going to be tough, and Robin comes up with the idea of tunneling under the bathroom. But then you're going to need to sneak the kids out without getting noticed by the military, which is going to be really difficult. And that's when Mike comes up with the plan that they need a mole. They need someone on the inside. They need the one kid they forgot to scrounge up, and that is Derek. So they convince Derek to go over to the quarantine zone. They arm him with a lunchbox that actually has a radio in it where he can communicate with Joyce. And they tell him to find out who the other kids are that know about Mr. Whatsit and tell them to go to the bathroom where Mike and all of them will be waiting. They then called up Murray to retrofit his van so that he can shuttle these kids out of there and get them to safety out of the quarantine zone. Derek does as he's told. He heads over to the quarantine zone. They did forget about him, so they allow him to enter. And he starts trying to figure out which kids knew about Mr. Whatsit so he can tell them when exactly they're supposed to head to the bathroom to get to safety. Meanwhile, you've got the other kids, Will, Mike, Lucas, Robin. They head in the tunnels to start digging their way into the bathroom. On the way there, Robin and Will have a little more of a conversation about the sexuality. And Robin doesn't come right out and say that she knows that Will is clearly leaning towards that way, but she kind of gives him an encouraging story about just accepting yourself and being who you are. It's actually a nice moment. But then they actually get to the bathroom. With Derek's help, one by one, they start getting the kids. There's just one slight issue. One of the kids grabbed one of the water pipes, and now you've got water leaking out into the bathroom, and it's only a matter of time before a military member sees it, so they have to act even quicker than they normally were expecting. With all that water, though, one of the kids just gets freaked out. They go and they tell the officer about it, and now Derek's like, oh crap, we really got to go. So he tells all the kids, run, go, go, go. And they all run to the bathroom and try to get to safety, while the military tries to keep them in the barracks. Now, some of the kids were able to get to Murray and get to safety, but everybody's kind of rounded up, including Joyce, by the way. They're caught by the military. They're brought to the one officer, and she tries to explain to them why they were doing what they were doing, but the military's like, yeah, that we know the kids are in danger. That's why we brought them here. Of course, the military thinking that they're in danger from 11, and Joyce knowing, no, they're in danger from legitimate monsters. And that's when everything changes. Will starts getting the feeling on his neck, the hair starts raising up, and everyone's attacked by demigorgons. Now, the military tries to fight it off as best they can, but there's only so much they can do against these beings. They do, however, do a pretty good job, but they're no match for Vecna, who shows up and destroys everybody. And Vecna didn't just open up a portal for himself, he's opening up a portal for other demigorgon in other areas. So Murray's convoy is attacked. Lucas in the tunnel, he's also attacked. And while Joyce tries to shield her son from getting attacked by Vecna, he just throws her to the side and he picks up Will. Vecna then controls Will in the air, bringing him towards him and says, "Can you see the children? You know why I chose them to reshape the world, right? It's because they are weak in body and mind, easily broken." And as this is happening, Will can see it. He can see the children getting sucked into the Upside Down. He then goes on to tell Will that Will was his first, and he broke so easily. He then says, some minds don't belong in this world, they belong in my world. He then drops Will and walks back into the Upside Down, figuring that Demigorgons will take care of the rest. Because Demigorgons are all over Robin, they're all over Mike, and they're all over Lucas. I mean, they're jumping, they're ready to go after them, but Will had remembered something that Mike actually told him. It was the fact that he was like Vecna, but like in a good way. Like maybe he can be the puppet master like Vecna is the puppet master. So after hearing that and then remembering what Robin said about just being true to yourself, he decides to tap into the hive like never before, and he is able to become just like Vecna, controlling the Demigorgons, so much so that he causes all three of them. Keep in mind, they are in different places, but he causes all three to stop in midair, and then he controls them to just start snapping limbs, killing them all, and saving his friends. This is a new Will, a Will that is ready to take control of it all. Now, episode 6 starts out with Will snapping out of it, and Mike, Joyce, they rush up to him. I mean, they're amazed at what he was just able to do. But for Will, he looks at it like a failure, because as he tells both of them, I mean, Vecna has them, and they're not coming back. So he's actually disappointed at his performance. But for Mike and Joyce, I mean, they're happy because they know that they would have been dead without him. But then they hear helicopters from the distance, and they know, we need to head out of here. We need to get into the tunnels. The first person they find is Lucas, and Lucas is in rough shape. I mean, he did take a pretty damning blow from one of the Demigorgon, but they start patching him up, and they tell Lucas all about what Will just did. And just like Mike, Lucas is like, oh my God, dude, you're like a wizard. But then they start discussing the fact that the kids are gone, and it's just looking bleak. Ideally, it would be great if Will could just tap back into Vecna or the Hive, but it doesn't seem like that's going to be an option if Demigorgon don't come back. They walk through the tunnels discussing all of this, trying to get to the radio station, and when they finally arrive there, Joyce pulls her son aside and tells him how proud she is of what he just accomplished. She apologizes for ever doubting him, and she's actually come up with an idea. She thinks there's got to be a way where they can get back into the Hive and use Will's newly found powers to get into Vecna and kill him. Will's not so sure. He's like, that's not possible, but Joyce reminds him, what you just did wasn't possible, but the impossible became possible. So let's start focusing on that. Let's really start game planning. And when they get into the radio station, they're reunited with Erica, Robin, Murray, and when they hear about what Will did, just like everybody else, they're amazed. I mean, there's a lot of heat being thrown on Will, who isn't totally comfortable with it. He doesn't view himself as a wizard. Although, actions speak louder than words. But then Joyce gives her theory on tapping back into the Hive and thus being able to access Vecna one-on-one, not a Demigorgon this time, and killing him. And all of that sounds great, but it's easier said than done. I mean, Dustin's nowhere to be found, and he's the one who built the transmitter that locates where the Hive is. They also know that they are very short on time. They don't have a ton of it, so they're going to need to brainstorm pretty quickly. And while they think about that, all of the kids that Vecna took are being told that they are also on borrowed time. I mean, not exactly. He gets all the kids together in a circle, and he lies to them, telling them that their family and friends will be reunited shortly, but the world is in danger, and he's found a way to save it. It's stuff that Holly doesn't believe at all while listening to it. And then he tells the group, enjoy today, but tomorrow we go to work. So Holly knows that they're on borrowed time as well, and to make matters worse, it doesn't seem like Henry is leaving anytime soon. So Holly is going to have to wait for an opportunity to sneak outside into the woods, which, by the way, is something that Henry told all the other kids they're not allowed to do. Don't go into the woods. However, when Holly sees her shot, she does it anyway. She's able to sneak into the woods, find Max, and Max is pretty concerned that she was followed, but Holly goes, no, I wasn't followed, don't worry. And then she debriefs Max on everything, saying they don't have a lot of time. They need to escape, like, now. And Max knew that they didn't have a ton of time, but she wasn't expecting this rushed process. But then they overhear something in the corner. They go to investigate, and they find out that Holly was, in fact, followed. she was followed by Derek. Now, up until this point, Holly has no idea what Derek did to help everybody in the real world. So when Holly asks Derek, "What are you doing here?" he not only tells her that he's basically besties with her brother, he knows Lucas, he knows Joyce, he knows Will, all of it, but he also lets Max and Holly know that he didn't buy anything that Henry was talking about. And when he looked around the room, the only other person that looked like they were suspicious was Holly. So when he saw Holly leave, he decided to follow her, and he wants to help out. Holly and Max say, yeah, that's not going to happen. I mean, you're not coming with us. But they do have a way for Derek to help out. Even though Derek has turned into delightful Derek, he needs to turn back into dipshit Derek, causing a scene and distracting Henry just enough so that Holly and Max can find a way out of there. They send Derek back to the house, armed with the map to locate the cave so that he won't be in any danger, hoping that once the kids see Derek walk into the woods, they'll alert Mr. Whatsit. He will go searching for Derek. Derek will have located the cave at this point. He'll be safe. And hopefully, if all goes well, Max and Holly would have been able to find a way out. And finding a way out is exactly what Hopper, 11, and number 8 were able to do out of the military compound in the Upside Down. Not only were they able to get out of there, but thanks to number 8's powers, she was able to create a hologram of herself that fooled Dr. K just enough so that Hopper, 11, and herself could get to safety. And by safety, I mean they went to the church where they thought that Dustin and his group were going to be. But this is not all kumbaya. 11 hasn't forgotten about what Hopper was willing to do, i.e. be a suicide bomber. She's pissed. It was never discussed, not once. And she looks at this as another example of Hopper not trusting her, but being overly protective. Hopper tries to explain to her, look, that was a last-ditch thing. That was, if all else fails, I'm going to be the suicide bomber, but 11 is still not pleased. But they all get distracted, though, when they do arrive at the church, and Dustin's group isn't there. They're not going to go searching for him. Hopper just hops on the radio and tries to get in contact with him, but it's not working. And while he's doing that, 11 is apologizing to number 8 for not searching for her sooner. And number 8 doesn't care about that. But she does tell 11 all that happened to her since she was taken. She tells 11 that not only was she taken, but her head was obviously shaved, as we see, and Dr. K started siphoning her blood. So much so that she thought Dr. K was a vampire. She had no idea what she was doing with it, but it got to the point where she just wanted to die. One day, though, she decided to fight back, try to escape. She starts stabbing some of the nurses. She's trying to find a way out, and then she finds out why they were siphoning the blood. Because when she enters one particular room, there is a pregnant woman. She notices that this pregnant woman is being pumped with her blood, and it's not working because the pregnant woman is in bad shape. Her body is rejecting the blood. And then she goes into another room and notices another pregnant woman, and goes into another room and notices another pregnant woman. All the same, all being injected, all of their bodies rejecting the blood. Eventually, number 8 is caught, tased, and strapped back up. But what she's been able to figure out is that while they thought that this was an experimentation by Papa and it was his creation, in reality, what happened was their mothers, all of their mothers, were injected with Henry's blood. They're the ones that survived. And really, the only one that is anywhere close to Henry is number 11. So number 8 turns to 11 and says, Kay is never going to stop searching for you because of that. Look, my blood is not working. So that's why she wants your blood. Kay is trying to restart Papa's program. And there's only one person that is as powerful as Henry, and that is 11. 11 just pushes back on all this. She doesn't believe it. But really what it is it's just really tough for her to process, and she's being compared to Vecna, which she doesn't like. And she ends up walking away from number 8 and walking up to her actual Papa, Hopper, because even though the two were beefing a little while ago, sometimes you just need your dad. But Hopper was having no luck getting in touch with Dustin and that group. And they had made their way to Hawkins' lab, upside down version, but tensions were high. Dustin has an attitude problem. Steve isn't getting along with Dustin, or Jonathan for that matter. Nancy just wants to find her sister. So no one's in a real good mood. And Dustin doesn't even know what they're looking for. I mean, He's done this mathematical problem and he's figured out that the center of the circle is the lab, so they're looking for something. But what he thinks they're looking for is a quasi dark magic generator. Because his theory is that the circle is a shield protecting Vecna. Anything in there can't get out. So if they find this quote-unquote generator for the shield and they destroy it, that should break down the walls. They should be able to find Holly, find Vecna, save everybody, you would theoretically think. It's just a matter of finding this shield generator, and they don't know what they're looking for. Now, they do talk about breaking up the groups because of that tension, but eventually Nancy just says, no, we're staying put, which means Nancy goes with Jonathan and Steve goes with Dustin. They split up, they start looking for something out of the ordinary, and this gives an opportunity for Nancy to confront Jonathan about his attitude lately. Jonathan puts a lot of the blame on Steve. Nancy doesn't want to hear it. Their relationship is just not great at this point. Seems like Nancy wants Jonathan to grow up and realize the severity of the situation, and Jonathan is like, well, no, I do, but yeah, it's a lot of tension. And they certainly aren't the only ones, because not too far away, you've got Dustin and Steve who are still at each other's throats. They reach a playroom where Dustin tells Steve, yeah, why don't you just hang back, I'll start searching, but he comes up short. And when he eventually does come back, Steve kind of revels in the fact that Dustin's idea is not working. This, for them, is the straw that breaks the camel's back. Steve has had enough of Dustin's Tommy Toughnuts, woe is me, I'm going to be a dick attitude. And finally, they get to the real issue, and that is what happened with Eddie. Steve pulls no punches. He tells Dustin that he is idolizing this guy that shouldn't be idolized. Dustin, of course, cannot let anyone say anything bad about his king. After all, he was the head of the Hellfire Club and he knows Metallica, so, what's not to like? And Steve gets real with him and says, I told you both not to be a hero, but he wanted to be a hero. And that's what cost him his life. And by the way, he saved nobody. He was an idiot. And for Dustin, who always looked at Eddie as somebody who did save his life, he just loses it. He goes right at Steve. He starts attacking him. Steve isn't fighting back. He's really just defending himself. And it finally culminates in Steve just walking away going, you know what? I'm done. But believe it or not, this little scrap ends up benefiting the group. Because Dustin, as he's sitting there, wiping away the tears after getting his ass kind of handed to him, he notices that there's a room that he didn't check out before. And when he walks into it, it is the weirdest thing. Because you've got all of these scientific papers around, but what you also have is the map. And I'm talking the map that Dustin drew with the circle that has Hawkins' lab in the middle. So immediately, Dustin starts looking over everything. Meanwhile, you've got Nancy and Jonathan who have also come to a discovery. After their little tiff, Jonathan noticed that one of the door handles was melting, and they decided to investigate it, and they found this entire room of melted, dilapidated materials, including old soldiers that looked like they were probably from maybe the Vietnam War, World War II. Whatever the case may be, they think they're on the right track. Eventually, though, this leads to the roof of Hawkins' lab, where they discover an orb, an energy shield. It's a lot like what Dustin talked about. But when they try to radio Dustin, and Dustin radios back, it doesn't really work. Because during the fight with Steve, his radio was busted. But while they're discovering this orb, and Dustin is aware of that, he did overhear that part on the radio, he has discovered that they cannot touch it. He frantically tries to get in touch with both Nancy and Jonathan, telling them, do not touch it. If you touch it, you will die. Don't mess with it. But unfortunately, Jonathan and Nancy, they can't hear any of this because of Dustin's busted radio. And Nancy decides, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to take a shotgun to the damn thing. Now, at this point, back at Hawkins, at the radio station, the brainstorming has come up empty, and they decided to take a snack break. And it's exactly what the doctor ordered, because both Erica and Lucas come up with ideas. Erica's idea is, if we can't have Dustin, go get his mentor. Mr. Clark is the biggest nerd in Hawkins, so if you get him, you might be able to figure out how to work this transmitter. Whereas Lucas's idea is a little more to the point. He realized while making popcorn that when Billy was overtaken by Vecna, they stuck him in a sauna to heat up those particles and get them out of him. just like with popcorn. So his idea is go get one of the dead Demigorgon, heat him up, bring him back to life Frankenstein style. That'll allow Will to tap back into the hive, hopefully find Vecna and kill him. And the way they're going to heat this up is just by using the radio antenna. Now, both ideas have holes and flaws, but Joyce says, yeah, do both. I mean, hopefully we'll hit a bullseye. So while Erica goes to search for Mr. Clark, Mike and Lucas went to go grab a dead Demigorgon. This allowed Will and Robin to finally chat a little bit more. Initially, Robin just wants to thank Will for saving her life, but Will says, no, I should be thanking you. I mean, you talked to me. And the whole coming out conversation comes up more. Robin explains that she never would have had the courage to go out with a girl, but when she eventually did come out to somebody, and that somebody being Steve, it just made her feel a lot better about it, just saying it out loud. And for Will, he can't believe that Robin came out to Steve of all people. But he also clearly wants to come out. It's unclear if Robin is picking up on any of these signs. They don't really get too far down the road, however, when Mike and Lucas show back up with the dead Demigorgon. They set the thing up. Robin cranks up the voltage, and now it's just on Will to hopefully tap into this Frankenstein Demigorgon. Meanwhile, in Vecna's world, Max and Holly's plan is working. When Derek headed back into the woods, he told the kids that he didn't care about Henry's rules. The kids ran and told Henry. It's allowing Max and Holly to travel through her memories to hopefully find the core memory that will allow them to escape. It's all a little fuzzy for Holly, and it's also scary at times. I mean, one of the memories is the Demigorgon killing her mother right in front of her, and Holly's upset about the fact that she didn't do anything, but Max says, that was the old Holly, the new Holly would have done something, don't worry. This idea, though, does bear fruit. They eventually reach the exact location of what Max thinks would be the exit. It looks just like what she was running through when she heard Kate Bush until obviously the tape stopped. But when they go to leave, however, the door closes. And that's because Derek was not able to get to the cave. He was able to distract Henry long enough, but Henry eventually caught him, threatened to kill his entire family, and he had to give up the goods on what Max and Holly were up to. So Henry has tracked them down. And while Max tries to escape by busting windows, it doesn't work, and Vecna eventually just grabs Max by the throat because he's been searching 2 years for her. Now, it's worth mentioning at this point that in the real world, the Demigorgon has kind of come back to life, which does allow Will to tap in, but the first person that he taps into isn't Vecna, it's actually Derek. And he starts repeating everything. That Holly is with Max, which comes as a big surprise to everybody. But as it looks like Vecna is going to kill Max, Will does it. He's able to tap into Vecna, and using all of his powers, he's even able to snap Vecna's leg. Max, who at this point was dropped, is trying to catch her breath as Will, speaking through Vecna, says, you need to run. And you don't have to tell both Holly or Max twice. They get the hell out of there, but Henry is really powerful. He's able to come back, and he just starts screaming at Will to get out. Eventually, Will doesn't get out, he's forced out. Will, who was standing up using all of his might to focus on all of this, is thrown back and is passed out. The Demigorgon is fried. Everything inside of him just swirls up in a hurricane near the radio tower. While the group, they rush towards Will to see if he's okay. In the actual episode 6, Will is in a coma, and no one can quite figure out why. Joyce is just by his side, hoping to God he wakes up, while Mike, Robin, and Lucas discuss it and discuss the fact that it doesn't make any sense. And that is when Robin has a eureka moment. She remembers when Will was seeing things through Derek's eyes. The fact that Max was also there with Holly. And it dawned on her that the doctors never had a clue on why Max was in a coma. But what they do know is that when Vecna puts you in a trance, well, that looks an awful lot like a coma. So what she thinks is that you've got Will, Holly, and Max. But Holly and Max are in the same place, and they're trying to make a break for it. And if they're able to get out of Vecna's mind, then they will be reunited with their body, but they'll also have intel on what Vecna is doing, what he's thinking, that sort of thing. So they're going to have to help in this matter as best they can, which means that Lucas is going to have to head to the hospital armed with Kate Bush and try his best to, use the power of music again. Robin is going to drive him. Mike is going to stay back and make sure that everything's okay with Will. And let me tell you, things are going a lot better in the real world than they are in the Upside Down. Because what Dustin feared came true. When Nancy fired that shot, it didn't go as they expected. And there was nothing that Dustin could do about it. Shortly after realizing that he's too late, he just slumps down in the stairwell where Steve finds him, and he tells Steve everything that we thought about the Upside Down is false. Vecna didn't make the Upside Down. Science did. That orb in the sky that Nancy shot at is called exotic matter. It's a single source of energy that was holding the wall together, and when Nancy disrupted it, it would bring the wall down. And while they thought that Vecna and Holly and all the kids would be on the other side of that wall, what's really on the other side of the wall, as Dustin puts it, is death. Because what they're actually in is in the middle of a wormhole. You've got their world, and then you've got another world right underneath it. Connecting the two is the Upside Down. While it seems like Dustin has just accepted the fact that he is going to die, he's just waiting for this black hole to fall in on itself, Steve isn't willing to do that at all. He needs to go find Nancy and Jonathan. He starts climbing the stairwells as they literally start disintegrating in front of him. They're like melting. All the while, Dustin's telling him there's no point. It finally gets to one stairwell where, in order to get up, Steve is going to have to put a ladder and hope to God that he is able to get to the other side before the entire stairwell melts, because if it does, he's going to die. And he's pretty sure that he's going to be able to do it, but Dustin says, no, don't. And Steve goes, no, I got it. And Dustin finally grabs him and pulls him back and goes, you're stupid, man. Like, you always do this. You're always putting yourself at risk. And then Dustin has a full-on breakdown, begging Steve not to go, saying, I can't lose another one. I can't lose you. You can't go. No, don't go. And at that point, Steve realizes that, yeah, he was attached to Eddie. And yes, this whole time, his little friend has been going through it, and it's been masked in this facade of just being a dick. But in reality, he is still a kid, and he has lost one of his best friends, and now he is terrified of losing his other mentor. So Steve doesn't go. He just does what Dustin needs in that moment, gives him a hug and says, it'll be all right, man. And by the way, Dustin was right, because seconds later, that entire stairwell melts, and Steve would have died. But unfortunately, they have no way to get to Jonathan or Nancy at this point, who are stuck. They're trying to get out of this little tiny room that they're in, and that goo is dripping down. I mean, at least they know what happened to those soldiers that they passed on the way to the roof, because this liquid that is falling in, it looks a lot like it. I guess think about Nancy and Jonathan being stuck in a room that is being filled up by Elmer's glue. It gets to the point where they just have to hop on a desk and wait to die. And at that point, they decide to start admitting stuff to each other that they've never told each other. It starts out as stupid stuff like, I don't like The Clash, I don't like reading your articles, but then it actually gets pretty deep into their relationship. How maybe they needed a break at one point, how Nancy needed a break, but Nancy also tells them, look, Steve's a great guy, and yeah, I care about him, but it was never going to work with him. And that's when Jonathan comes up with the ultimate admission, and that is, I was going to propose to you. But he actually unproposes. He shows Nancy the ring, and then he says, yeah, will you not marry me? It's really unclear whether or not these two are together, but what is clear is that they chuck the ring, and they notice that it pings off the ground. Because all that goo that was falling in, it hardened, and it stopped. And now, they might have a way out, because they're no longer being swallowed up by whatever that liquid is, and the exotic matter must have chilled out. But that was going on in the middle of the circle, far away from the wall. If you were near the wall, like Hopper, Jane, and 8, it was a lot different. Because that wall quickly came down, and everything was getting sucked to the other side, which, mind you, was nothing. I mean, you were getting sucked into a black hole. But luckily, it also opened up the gate so that those three could get home. Using her powers, Jane is able to shield all three of them from the material that is flying by their heads, and they are able to get to the other side. And the first place they head is to the radio station. 11 is thrilled to be reunited with Mike. Hopper is thrilled to be reunited with Joyce, and then there's number 8, who's just kind of along for the ride. As soon as they arrive, everybody gives them the breakdown on what happened with Will, and 11 jumps into action trying to locate him. She goes to a soundproof studio, she puts headphones on, she blindfolds herself, and she starts to go to work. Hopper, meanwhile, headed to the basement to patch himself up from his injuries and fill Mike in on everything that happened and what's going on with Dustin and that crew and how he tried to locate them, but he couldn't because they just up and left. Hopper's really frustrated, though. I mean, to him, none of this makes sense. The wall, the black hole, all of it. But Mike's a little more optimistic, saying, well, at least now with Will, we have a way in. But they have to locate Will. And that's when number 8 interrupts the conversation and says, yeah, well, Jane hasn't been able to locate Will, and she is struggling. And this sparks a confrontation between number 8 and Hopper. Number 8 blaming Hopper for Jane struggling and basically saying that he's been coddling her entire life, and what he should be doing is getting her prepared for what happens after Henry dies, because this thing doesn't end when Henry dies. And Hopper saying, well, you don't know my daughter. You don't know what you're talking about. The pissing contest only ends when the light starts to flicker and everybody realizes that it must be 11 struggling. So Mike runs up, he snaps her out of it, and she says, yeah, no, I can't find him. And he says, well, don't worry about it. We'll just recharge and try again. But Hopper says, we're going to try again in the deprivation tank. It's going to take a while to set up, and you need to recharge anyway. So they're going to head off to the cabin. At this point, though, Robin and Lucas have arrived at the hospital. They think this is going to be a really easy, quick trip, but it's not. That's because Vicky, who is Robin's quasi-girlfriend, grabs her and says, no, we got to talk. So Lucas says, yeah, no, you two go talk. I'm just going to go head up to Max's room and start playing Kate Bush, which he does. And Vicky wants to talk because the cops are after Robin. Actually, military police to be exact. That's because the hospital knows that Robin stole a bunch of drugs. And Vicky's concerned that Robin is actually a drug addict and she's going through withdrawal. So Robin starts to explain, no, that's not the case. And Vicky is convinced that her girlfriend is just in with the wrong crowd. Keep in mind, that crowd has made their way to the cabin at this point. They start setting up the deprivation tank. Will has also been transported to the cabin. Joyce is by his side. Hopper comes over, and Joyce starts confiding in him and beating herself up over the fact that she pushed Will to do this, and now he's in a coma, and Hopper just gives her a little bit of a pep talk. Meanwhile, in the other room, you've got Mike, who is helping 11 set up for the deprivation tank, but he does ask 11, hey, number 8 had mentioned that this thing wouldn't be over when Henry died. What exactly was she talking about? And 11 sits down Mike and tells him everything about the fact that, yeah, if they kill Henry, they're still going to be after her because Henry's blood is coursing through her veins. She's the closest thing to him, and they're just trying to reset up Papa's experiments. And Mike tries to give her a bit of a pep talk and say, oh, don't worry about it. It's no big deal. But for 11, it is a big deal. I mean, she's going to be hunted for the rest of her life. And Mike reminds her, we already knew this. That's why when this thing's over, we're gone. We're not staying in Hawkins. We're getting the hell out of here. 11, though, looks at him and says, Mike, this isn't your campaign. I mean, you don't get to write the ending. And he says, maybe I don't, but we do. Me, you, Lucas, Dustin, Max. Because this is our story. And it does make 11 feel better. But number 8 was on the outside eavesdropping on the entire conversation. Now, while 11 gets ready to go find Will, you've got Max and Holly still trying to find a way out. When Will, speaking through Vecna, said run, they did that, but they didn't run towards the exit. They couldn't get through that. They just ran back from where they came. And they ran all the way back to the cave, the one that Vecna's scared of, but he tracked them down. And it wasn't like he came through the entrance of the cave. He stayed on the outside as he always does. But he let Max know there's other ways to get to you. Initially, Max thought that he was bluffing, but Holly didn't think that he was bluffing. She fully believed that he had found another way to get to Max. This put a little urgency in Holly to get the hell out of there. She started brainstorming on why Henry was so scared of that cave, and she came to the conclusion that something must have happened in the cave or around it. She asked Max, have you searched this cave? And Max laughed at her and said, yeah, there's nothing out of the ordinary. There's nothing you would be scared of. But Holly reminds her, yeah, there's nothing that you would be scared of. What about him? What about Henry? Because maybe we can get home through his PTSD, his bad memories. And yeah, it doesn't make any sense, but nothing in this place does. So maybe if we find the source of his bad memory, it will lead to the exit. And for Max, she thinks that's nuts. She doesn't want to go through with it, but Holly is determined. she's not about to wait around for Max to see the light. She heads out to the desert, the same desert that Max told her. I have searched that over and under. There's nothing out there. But Holly's willing to search again. And this time, a new set of eyes does reveal something. Because armed with a spyglass, Holly notices that the spyglass is weird. It's like cut into a different shape, but that different shape is the exact shape of the opening of the cave. That can't be a coincidence. And as she's explaining this to Max and she's backing up to just set it exactly right, she finds it. The source of the bad memory. It's a broken down shaft. Holly damn near falls in it and Max saves her, but when they head down there, they see the memory. It's this guy, he's got a briefcase and a gun, and then they see probably 9-year-old Henry dressed up like a Boy Scout, just wanting to help this guy, but this guy, he was nuts. I mean, he was convinced that Henry was sent by somebody to grab the briefcase, and this psychopath shot at Henry. He actually connected. He shot him right through the hand, and he would have killed Henry, but Henry fought back. He started bludgeoning him with a rock. And for Holly and Max, they watch it all, but Max eventually shields Holly's eyes because it is a very violent scene for a little girl to watch. For Holly, she can't understand why this guy would do this because Henry just wanted to help, and she's starting to realize that this might be Henry's villain origin story. But then, Max, she hears Kate Bush, and her head whips around. She starts looking for the source for it. Meanwhile, you've got Holly, who is watching the memory still go down. She's watching young Henry grab that briefcase and open it up, but she's unable to see what's inside it because Max runs back and says, "You were right. You're right. There is a way out." And it's all thanks to Lucas playing Kate Bush. So both Holly and Max start trying to get their way out of that shaft by just grabbing rocks and wiggling their way through. But when Henry said there's another way to get to Max, he wasn't kidding. Because when Will had tapped into Vecna, Vecna was able to grab a hold of Will and use him just like a vessel. He trapped him. And Will tried to act like he wasn't scared and he wasn't worried. He started mocking Vecna about the fact that Holly and Max got away, but Vecna said, no. You don't understand. You're the person who created the tunnels for me in the first place. I mean, a lot of this is your fault. But you're going to spy for me one more time. And it's a very, very painful process. But through Will, Vecna is able to find out where Max is located in the real world, i.e. the hospital. Because he's dead set on killing her. And even though Will fights back, Vecna is just too strong. So a little while later, when Eleven goes searching for Will in the deprivation tank, she does find him. But as soon as he comes to, he says, they're going after Max. Vecna knows where she is. And once 11 gets out of the deprivation tank, she tells the group, but they're pretty far from the hospital and they're not going to make it in time. In a way, the Demigorgons actually help Robin out. Because as she was trying to convince Vicky that she was not an addict, those military police showed up, they found her, they started escorting her out to arrest her, and that's when the Demigorgons showed up. It terrified everybody. It also, by the way, gave credence to the story that Robin had told Vicky. But immediately Robin notices they're not after us, they're after somebody else. And that's when she realizes they must be after Max. She hops on the PA system of the hospital and warns Lucas, you got to grab Max, get out of there, go to the elevator, meet us in the basement. And that's exactly what Lucas does. He starts carrying Max's body along with the boombox to keep Kate Bush going, and he links up with Robin and Vicky down in the laundry room, but eventually they are surrounded by Demigorgons, and it's not looking good. You know, they probably would have been killed if it wasn't for the fact that all the Demigorgons got distracted by a noise going on in one of the dryers. They all go to investigate, and then the dryer explodes because somebody put an oxygen tank in the dryer. They started it up, and not too long later, the damn thing exploded right in front of all the Demigorgons, killing them. And that person was that bad bitch. That person was Mrs. Wheeler, who was lying in her hospital bed when she heard the message about the Demigorgons. And she wasn't willing to sit back and wait. And this is huge because Lucas was able to keep the boombox going with Kate Bush. And at this point, in Vecna's mind, Max and Holly have made their way to the exit. But Max has to stop and say, Holly, this is where we leave each other because you can't come with. That's my body. You have to find your own way out. And Holly is terrified. But there really is only one portal, and it's for Max, and she can see it. She can see Lucas holding her body. And Holly says, I don't have Kate Bush. Like, I don't have a boyfriend. And Max just starts making some crap up. I mean, it sounds really good. It's like, hey, we got to find something that you connect with on the outside. And for Holly, it's Holly the heroic, the toy that Mike gave her. The problem is, Holly doesn't feel very heroic, but Max gives the speech of all speeches. She hypes up Holly, making her feel invincible, reminding her who the hell she is, how brave she really is in that moment. And damn it if it doesn't work. I mean, a portal opens up for Holly. Even Max is surprised. She has to admit, yeah, I didn't know if that was going to work. But the portal for Holly is to her body, and Max tells her, yeah, it looks like you're on the Upside Down. Don't worry. You go back. The Upside Down is just like Hawkins. Find your home. Stay there. We will get to you. And then they both hug. They go their separate ways, and they're on their way back to their friends and their family. In episode 7, Max snaps out of her coma, finally. She sees Lucas. She's emotional. He's emotional. She's crying. He's crying. It's a really touching scene with bad acting, but unfortunately for Max, because she's been in a coma for so long, her muscles are basically useless. They need to start to adjust to being used again, so she's going to be bound in a wheelchair for quite some time. But they also don't have a ton of time to just chill in the hospital laundry room because Vicky rushes in and says, yeah, we got company, the military's here, we got to get you the hell out of here. Before they flee the hospital, Max does give both Mike and Mrs. Wheeler an update on Holly, saying that she's pretty sure she's in the Upside Down. There was really nothing she could do for her. She told her to go to the house in the Upside Down, and they'd pick her up eventually. So now they just need to get to the closest gate, which for them is going to be actually easier than ever to get through, because there's gates all over Hawkins thanks to the rift that was created. They just have to move a giant steel plate, which for normal people would be extremely difficult. For them, it's not going to be because they have Elle and her powers. As they're discussing this, Lucas gets a radio call from Erica. Erica never gave up on her plan. She tracked down Mr. Clark, and with the help of Murray and Mr. Clark, they were able to triangulate Dustin's location. The whole process seems like it really should be quite simple at this point. You go to the triangulation site, you radio Dustin, and hopefully he can grab Holly. They go through the gate, voila, everybody's reunited. And then they just have to figure out how to kill Vecna. But when Mrs. Wheeler hears that Holly is in this Upside Down, keep in mind she has no idea what the Upside Down is, she wants to go with them. But Mike has to convince her, Mom, you've done enough. I mean, the safest place for you to be right now is here. So Mrs. Wheeler does stay back. The group then leave the hospital, and they do link up with Erica, Murray, and Mr. Clark. The funny thing is they haven't told Mr. Clark anything about the Upside Down. He's very confused when they all show up talking about where Dustin really is. But they are able to get to the site. Mike radios Dustin to tell him that Holly is in the Upside Down somewhere, and they need him to go locate her. But when Dustin tries to radio back, it's really garbled. However, Robin is convinced that she heard Dustin say, we already have Holly. So now it's just a matter of getting into the Upside Down, opening up the gate, and hopefully again, being reunited. They go to one location that isn't guarded at all. However, it is under surveillance. Mr. Clark, though, is able to work around that. 11 flips the steel plate. It opens up the gate, and the group head inside. For a first-timer like Mr. Clark, it is a lot, but it doesn't take long for Dustin to run up and give Mike a giant hug. He isn't alone, though. He's got Steve, but he also has Jonathan and Nancy. Because when everything stopped, they were rescued by Steve and Dustin, who crashed a wall, and they were able to get them out of there. However, the look on Nancy's face really says it all. They don't have Holly. And what happened to Holly is just unfortunate, really. When Holly was reunited back with her body, she woke up in Vecna's desert-like paradise. Like most of the vessels, she's trapped, wrapped up, and hooked up to this feeding tube system. But she ripped it out. She freed herself. She started running through this desert-like wasteland. We'll call it New Mexico. And she remembered what Max said about opening up the gates, so she started peeling away at the ground. It opened up a gate, and she started falling out of the sky. Obviously, when you start falling out of the sky, you scream, and Nancy overheard it. She ran outside to see her sister dangling in the air, only to then see her sister be sucked back up to where she came from. And Nancy knows that it was Vecna. And of course, it is. Vecna just easily grabbed her, dragged her back to his lair, hooked her back up, and the next thing that Holly remembers, she wakes up back in that house in Vecna's mind. But it goes from bad to worse for Holly because then she starts getting gaslit by her classmates. Because Henry did a number on these kids, convincing them that Holly was traumatized by Max. Max is actually a monster, and Holly believed everything that she said. He's able to get the kids to all get together and say, you know what, we're going to help Holly see the light. We're going to convince her that, no, Henry's the good guy, Max is the bad guy. And when Holly eventually wakes up, she's got all of her classmates surrounding her, telling her, no, Holly, you're wrong. Henry's really, really good. You just don't see it, but he's going to save us. Of course, as you can imagine, Holly pushes back on this, but she does have an ally, at least she thought, in Derek. And when she says, Derek, come on, tell him the truth. All Derek can think about is the threat that Henry made regarding his parents and his family. So he turns his back on Holly and says, no, Holly, they're right. Henry's a good guy. At this point, Holly realizes she has no allies. She needs to get the hell out of there. She starts attacking her classmates, trying to escape, but Henry figured this would be the case. He actually uses his powers to choke her with her own necklace, which gets destroyed, so Holly the heroic goes tumbling to the ground, and she's trapped. She's trapped in Henry's mind. When everybody gets back to Hawkins, they immediately head to the Squawk. This is the first time that Max is able to see the radio station, and immediately Lucas starts giving her a tour, explaining that it was abandoned right before the quarantine, and they kind of took it over. They've got Rockin' Robin, but even though Max appreciates it, something is clearly bothering Max. And it's the fact that Holly is out there by herself, alone. She starts telling this to Lucas because she's clearly guilty about all this, but Dustin jumps in and says, I know where he's keeping Holly. Because thanks to all of those notes that Dustin found, which were by Brenner, he thinks he's been able to figure it out. Dustin thinks that Vecna is keeping Holly in what he calls the Abyss. The Abyss is Vecna's home, and the Abyss is above the Upside Down. Now remember, the Upside Down is nothing more than a wormhole, a very unstable wormhole that is held together by exotic matter. And underneath that is Hawkins. So what Vecna does is he comes down from the Abyss, his home, and he uses the Upside Down as a bridge to Hawkins. But the Abyss isn't just the home of Vecna, it's the home of everything bad. We're talking the Demigorgons, the Mind Flayers. If it sucks, it's probably coming from the Abyss. And the way that it got to Hawkins was through the bridge, a.k.a. the Upside Down. When 11 made contact with the Abyss, that's when the bridge formed. When they kicked Vecna's ass a year ago, Dustin's pretty sure he just simply retreated back to the Abyss to lick his wounds, heal up, and then return fire. All of this explains why Elle can't find him when she's in the bath, why Holly fell from the sky. But the question that Hopper has is, okay, why is he taking kids? And that's when Will steps in and says, well, it's the same reason he took me. The minds of kids are weaker. He's going to use all those kids to magnify his powers. Only Hopper doesn't know why he would want to do that, and Max steps in and says, it's because he wants to combine worlds. Slowly, the group is able to figure out that Vecna has torn up pieces in his world, in Hawkins, so that he can bring his world down to combine with Hawkins and recreate the world in his image. And this is all a big problem because Lucas has had this theory that November 6th, the day that this all started, is the day that Vecna wants to end it. By the way, it's November 6th, which means that Vecna is planning on ending everything, combining the worlds, that night. So they don't have a ton of time to figure out a solution for all of this. And considering they have to go through the gate, find a way up into the sky, into Vecna's home, kill him, grab the kids, come back down, it's just a lot. And everybody's stressed out about it. There's a lot of infighting. But finally, Steve comes up with a great solution. Because the Upside Down is a carbon copy of Hawkins, that means there is a carbon copy of the Squawk, the radio station, down in the Upside Down. And if Vecna is planning on bringing his world down to combine with Hawkins, he suggests that they just wait at the top of the tower and wait for Vecna to come to them and surprise him. This could also allow them to have El tap into his mind and destroy him. Only El chimes in and says, yeah, I've never been able to do that. But Nancy points out there's another solution. There's the lab in the Upside Down. They still have all the equipment, including the tank. That could be what they use to destroy Vecna. And 11's down, but then 8 jumps in and says, well, she probably will need help with this. I will assist. So the plan is set. 11 and 8 are going to head to the lab in the Upside Down. They're going to use Max's guidance once they are in Vecna's mind to destroy it, and they're hopefully going to catch him by surprise when he brings his world closer to Hawkins. Once they distract him enough where his world stops coming down, they're also going to plant a bomb so that when it goes off, it completely destroys the bridge. No more Upside Down. No way for Vecna to rebuild an army and once again attack this small Indiana town. Now they just have to prepare for that night. This is going to be one last crawl, but it's got Hopper very stressed out. Again, 11 is going to be at risk, and it's just something that he's never going to be comfortable with. He confides in Joyce about all of this, and he just keeps repeating to her, I can't lose her. And he also does not trust number 8 at all. He thinks that there's an ulterior motive going on with that girl. Meanwhile, inside the radio station, you've got Will and Max talking about how useless they both feel. Even though Max is planning on helping 11 navigate through Henry's mind, Will, he doesn't have anything to do. He can't get too close. The last time he did, Vecna used him to spy on Max, and it almost got her killed. Max completely brushes that off, though, reminding him, you saved my life, and I've almost been killed by this guy plenty of times, don't worry about it. And then Will asks her, how did you survive in there all that time? And she explains how she found this cave that he was just deathly afraid of. Because underneath all those scars, he's still just a human. Max doesn't know it, but that's something that Will really needed to hear. Steve, by the way, knows that there's something Dustin needs to hear. As everybody is gearing up with grabbing weapons, guns, Steve pulls him aside and says, hey man, look, I said some stuff and I'm sorry. Eddie did save your life. He saved all of our lives. He sacrificed himself. And the reality is you were grieving and I wasn't there for you because I was jealous. But I miss my best friend. And Dustin says, yeah, I miss my best friend too. They hug. It's adorable. They patch things up. It's cute. But while most of the people at the radio station are gearing up for battle on the outside, you've got Erica and Mr. Clark doing some recon, and Murray trying to get the truck ready because he's going to be transporting everybody into the Upside Down. They're just going straight through the military gate. At least that's the plan. It's just the easiest way. In order to get Murray's truck ready, though, 11 had to flip it using her powers, and number 8 came with her. And as Murray was working on the truck, number 8 and 11 decided to have a private chat in each other's heads. Turns out Hopper has a real good reason to be scared of number 8. Because while she's in 11's head, number 8 tells her that the military is not going to stop. This doctor replaced Papa, which means that they'll just send somebody to replace her if they end up killing the doctor. The only way to stop this thing is to do it themselves. So what number 8 wants 11 to do is when everybody leaves the Upside Down for the last time, setting the bomb in place and thinking that they're done, her and 11 are going to stay back, sacrificing themselves because they know that the military is never going to stop searching, and if they are caught, the military will continue to experiment, open up new worlds, and it's just, they can't risk it. And while Jane doesn't really want to do that, it does make a lot of sense, and you could just tell by the look on her face that she is seriously considering going along with it. The conversation, though, ends when Murray yells, hey, we got to get going, because they have to go pick everybody up. And everyone's getting picked up at the radio station, where Will decides he needs to have a chat with his mom about what's going on. Will starts trying to come out to his mom, but they get interrupted by Mike. And instead of delaying it any longer, Will says, no, Mike, actually, you should hear this too. Everybody should hear it. And it's very long and drawn out, but Will comes out of the closet finally. Everybody's real supportive. There's hugs, there's tears. But the reason why he decided to do it now was because one of the ways that Will would fight Vecna back was thinking about good memories. And the way that Vecna would win is placing bad memories in his head, or really bad premonitions. Like, he made Will believe that there was this future, that when Will came out of the closet, everybody would distance themselves from Will. It wouldn't happen all at once, but it would slowly happen. And next thing you know, he was just lonely, alone, all the time. So in order to face this head on, he wanted to come out to everybody. And once he got everybody's support reassuring him, dude, you're not going to be alone, we're not allowing that to happen, he felt a lot better about everything, knowing that Vecna was just messing with his mind. And with this newfound confidence, he decides he's going along with. He needs to show Vecna he's not scared of him anymore. So that night, Murray loads up the truck with everybody going to the Upside Down. Mr. Clark and Erica from Watchtowers end up remotely opening up the military gates. Murray just charges on through. And right before they go through the gate, Dr. K is standing there staring at 11, her prized possession, go right through. Murray and his convoy are able to safely get through, while in Vecna's mind, he gathers all the kids around the table, he has them hold hands, and then he says it's go time. Their eyes roll in the back of their heads snap back, and Vecna is ready to combine worlds. And that is the end of part 2 of Stranger Things. Thank you so much for getting this part of the recap. I really appreciate it. Consider subscribing to the channel. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. Let me know in the comment section what you thought about this part of Season 5 and your predictions for the finale. I have t-shirts, I have hats, mugs. You can become a member of the channel or join a Patreon. I have different ways that you could support. Or, of course, you could choose not to. That's also an option. Really, the one thing I ask, though, is you just don't be rude in the comment section, because nasty comments make me feel bad. But, yeah, with the finale, I'll be back. So just, hopefully I'll see you then.